It's good. It feels good to be back, and I want to say thank you and far as how I appreciate how Operation Good Foundation, the founder and executive director, um, Gino Womack. I really appreciate how he embraced my concept on the anti-bullying and how he built a curriculum and a program around it. And also, I'm grateful and I appreciate how I was invited to come out and tell my story and read my books in front of the classroom about bullying, and also bringing me back again to tell my story and share my story and talk with the youth, and they loved it. And all this came as far as creating my anti-bullying workbook initiative is when I was in prison. I'm from Chicago, the south side of Inglewood. I grew up in a dysfunctional home, a broken home, abusive, violent home. My father was a gang member. He ended up going to prison when I was about 6 years old. I was a youngster. But the thing is, I was born premature. So that led to a lot of mental and physical challenges, as far as speech impediment, comprehension, as far as also my feet was turned inward, so I walked it funny. I had to train myself how to walk, right or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of kids made fun. They used to joke about it. The thing is, we moved a lot, so I always had problems with the bullies. And then what happened was I always fought the bullies. Always fought the bullies. We either became friends, best friends, allies, or whatever. Even though I knew I probably couldn't beat the bully, or I knew how it was going to end, but just the fact that I stood, even though I was always a small guy. I was never a big guy. I always was a small guy, but I always had a heart. And I always stood up to the bullies. So they always gave me as far as respect amongst the bullies. And this was growing up just in elementary, all through elementary school, because we moved a lot. And then moved a lot, of course, by moving a lot, you moved to different neighborhoods. And then eventually, to high school, the same thing. But the thing is, this here taught me how to deal and how to cope with bullies. So I was always the type of guy that used to defend people who was being bullied. They always come get me. I could be in my classroom, even in high school, they'll come get me. Because when I first went to high school, the guy who was over the gang members, he was an older guy. He was a D. Moore senior. And one day when I was coming out, he challenged me. And I stood up against him, but all his men, his soldiers, they all surrounded me. It was like about 20 or so. And I stood up against them. But they didn't do anything. They was testing me. I didn't know. But just the fact that I stood up to him, they respected me. And the school respected me. And I was a freshman. But he didn't like it. But the thing, what I'm saying is, this how I had to navigate all my life. I grew up not just in an abusive, violent household, but also in the streets, because my father was a gang member. And also, I grew up in the gang culture, and then eventually the drug culture. And as I got older, just like most of the kids that grew up in my neighborhood, they got involved in gangs, and so did I. Because, like I say, a lot of guys I grew up with in the environment I come from, most of them don't have fathers, or they come from broken homes, or dysfunctional homes. And this eventually look for that connection, that brotherhood. And with time, as I got involved in gangs, this led me into a life as becoming a gang leader. I grew up in Inglewood. So as time went on, I was the person eventually to run Inglewood. I organized, I ran Inglewood as far as in the gang culture, in the drug culture. And eventually, I got indicted with Larry Hoover. And this was one of the most high-profile cases in the country It was in '95. The president was involved in my case, the mayor, the governor, the military, and I was indicted with him. I went to trial with him. That was an experience, and I ended up getting a mandatory minimum life sentence. A minimum, my sentence, I had a minimum life, not max. My minimum was life, with no parole, no out date. So, and we, even the day we got found guilty, not sentenced, the military, we was escorted by the military, and we was put on a military cargo plane and flown to USP Terry Hutt at the time in Indiana. On the compound, they locked the prison down, and they put us in the section where they had the Cuban house that tried to take over USP Atlanta. They placed us there, and while we was there, we then went to 6-7 months later. They transferred to maximum security Marion, which was the first ADX. They were just transitioning ADX at the time, opening ADX up. We stayed there until I went to, we went to sentencing or whatever. But anyway, after that, ended up going to prison. I went to 10 high security prisons throughout my journey, throughout my prison bid. 10 high security prisons because of my case. My case was very high profile. And also I was sentenced and classified as a gang lord and also as a kingpin. I was charged under 848 CC, criminal enterprise federal statute. While I was in prison, I had to learn myself. And I had to figure out, is this my permanent home? Is this my life? So throughout my journey, I discovered who I was, who I was born and created to be, something great. It came from God. Most time I was mostly locked down, based on my custody and also my affiliation, and so that had a lot of problems as far as throughout my imprisonment. But during them times and periods, I learned. I started reading a lot. I started doing a lot of reflection, a lot of introspection, and just looking within myself. And so that's why then I always ask myself and pray to God, like, why is my life like this? Is this gonna be my life? Because now I had time to myself. I was no longer in the environment that I was molded and shaped to become violent. Even though I was in another violent environment. Our prison breeds violence. But yet, for some strange reason, even though it breeds violence, even though you're around a lot of people all the time, but a lot of times in somewhat, in solitary confinement or in special housing unit, in the hole, they call it the hole, I had a lot of time sometimes where it's to myself. So I started reading a lot. I started reading a lot of books on psychology, theology, philosophy, business, law, politics. And I just opened it, and then like I said, I went to 10 high security prisons, but over time, I just kept just looking and searching. To one day, I kept praying and asking God, why is this? Until one night it hit me. It said, because of the way you think, your mind. And I realized that, and from reading and searching within, I started to change my mind. I started to take up programs. I started educating myself and learning. And so, then what happened was I started coming up with ideals. I said, even though I got a life sentence, even though I might never get out of prison, I want to create something to where it can help. I can maybe pass it on to somebody, to my kids or whoever, but I want to create something that can help the next generation, to give them a blueprint, or to create something that can help them change the way they think. And I came up with these ideas, children books, the anti-bullying books, and my other children book, In the Land of Trinity, which is hard spelled backwards, which is my characters deal with. As you can see, the sheep, the wolf, the hart, you know, as you can see, I came crazy, even though I had no outdate. So I started coming up with clothing line designs, and I started working with other, you know, guys that was in prison, coming in, youths, helping them out, mentoring them. So I ended up doing 25 years. But while I was doing that time, I got my master's degree in religion. I got my doctorate of divinity degree in religion. And after 25 years, I got the second chance under the First Step Act that Donald Trump signed in 2018. I got immediate release. But during that time, I created a lot of material. So when I got out of prison, when I got out of prison, I got released. I immediately went to work and started putting the ideals into action. You know, and it took time for me to get on my feet, to get things right. But when I did create these concepts, my children books, and I'm in Chicago. But the thing is, you had all these violence prevention organizations. I'm pitching my ideal to them. I could get no help. I could get no assistance or anything. And you had all these organizations that proclaimed to help the youth in the streets, but they didn't yet do anything to give me any type of help, resources, or whatever. So eventually, I ran into someone. I was at a violent prevention intervention convention out in Atlanta. I ran across a good brother, which I kind of was familiar with, but we finally met and connected, and I pitched my idea to him about my bullying books that I created. And he's like, well, I already got some I'm working on dealing with anti-bullying. I said, yeah. So we came, got together, and somewhat like, well, let's put it together. And he built a curriculum and a program around it. He embraced it, which I'm from Chicago. I had to come way to Jackson, Mississippi to get that support, to get that help, and to get my ideals out there. Because I talked to individuals in Chicago that had the resources, that had the influence. They said, Bible, they called me Bible, that's my name, Bible, Tirenzy books, but they called me Bible. They said, Bible, you got a great idea. Because everybody always talk about anti-bullying, but no one yet have a product. No one yet has a solution. They said, you got it. But yet would no one give me a chance. So the good brother, Gino Womack, the founder, executive staff, director of Operation Good Foundation, he gave me that chance. And now what I created when I was in prison, although I didn't have no out date, thought I would never ever get out. And then when I did return and I created these books, now he gave me the chance to manifest them books, my ideals, into reality. And by us coming together, it's gonna flourish. And this here is, I know it works because how I know it works, I was once down. I grew up, as far as dealing with bullies and being bullied and, being far as in a gang and also becoming a gang leader, going to prison, being around violent inmates and guys just like me around. I was in the feds, guys around the country. But one thing I realized, those, not just the victim of bullying, but the ones who initiate bullying, they need love too. The thing is, and that's from growing up in that environment and being around them. I had a chance to talk to a lot of them when I was in jail, just like me, who grew up in a violent environment, who was violent. They come to find out that it was a reaction to pain. They grew up from abuse, from neglect, it's something that happened to them that was trauma, and they became the predator. And I just want to say this, that we have to give back. I was once the problem, now I have the solution because I have the knowledge, I have the skills, I have the experience, and I am the proof that change is possible. Is it right here? I appreciate it. That was good, yeah. Oh, then my children book. Here's my anti-bullying workbook that I created. I created one for middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, but it's not just for schools. You can use it anywhere, at home, youth centers, wherever. You know, the books is practical, it's relatable, and also the characters. So I created, and they say education, it's called edutainment. It educate and teach about coping with bullying, as far as empathy, kindness, self-confidence, emotional intelligence, and how to cope with being bullied. And also my other children book, In the Land of Trade, which is heart spelled backwards. So the thing is, these are the tools that are going to help the next generation to avoid from school, starting school, to the prison pipeline. This here is the tools to prevent that.
And now you got a bill in your name at that house.